All right, hello everybody and welcome. My name is AJ Edwards and this is Mr. E's Classroom, and I am joined today from two wonderful colleagues, teachers, and friends. We have Mrs. Ollinger and Mr. Parson. So Mrs. Ollinger, go ahead and please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Mrs. Allinger. I'm an 11th grade English teacher. I've taught 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th, and 12th. So I really enjoy, just talking about literature and reading with my kids, and I'm excited to be here.
All right, and then Mr. Parson, go ahead.
Yeah, hello everyone. Mr. Parson, I am a high school special ed teacher and have over 8 years of experience. Have primarily worked with students with their transition goals, so helping them get employment, get into college, and kind of the post-secondary goals. But co-teaching this year with the English department. Yeah, excited to be here.
Right on. Well, I think the first question, obviously, for my channel, I'm going to ask Mrs. Ollinger, what are you reading right now?
Ooh, I'm reading a couple books. I just started Animal Farm again. I got a little combo on my Kindle app, Animal Farm in 1984. It was free. And, those were both banned books, which is really interesting. I read through the intro and noticed that. I'm also reading Weird Sisters. I don't know the author. I just picked it up at a used bookstore. And I'm reading Purple Hibiscus. I don't know the author on that one either. I'm sorry, but I'll get those both to you. They're both amazing books, or all three of them. But I generally tend to have 2 or 3 novels going at once, just depending on like where I'm at or where I left them or lost them. So that's kind of how I read.
Nice.
Right on. Mr. P, what are you reading?
Right now I'm reading A Fool's Progress, an honest novel. It's roughly based an autobiography on Edward Abbey's life. And Edward Abbey is definitely one of my heroes. I live in the West, and so that's definitely a page turner. Love it.
Right on, fantastic. And me personally, I am actually reading The Maze Runner. So I'm doing a class on young adult literature right now, and we have to read 20 novels this semester and write like a little synopsis about it. So I picked 20 YA books that I haven't read, and I'm currently on The Maze Runner. And I might check out the movie later. I don't know yet, but it's starting to get interesting. It was very dry and slow, but now they just got locked outside for the first time, so it's getting really adventurous.
That's a good one.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. So recently we've had some incidents where books have been banned. Well, not recently, kind of like for the longest time since the written word was really there. There have been restrictions, limitations. And just recently we had the Dr. Seuss's publishers decided to pull several of his texts from production. And this event kind of brought to my mind the idea of censorship and restricting access to certain types of literature. And so I wanted to talk today a little bit about how we as educators handle the introduction, the teaching, or the encouraging of students to read potentially controversial texts. So my question for you all is, what is your approach or your philosophy in your classroom? How do you navigate these texts? And I think Mrs. A, ladies first, please.
Absolutely. So when I read a book that I know has been banned, I like to bring that up first thing. We read Catcher in the Rye in my honors class, which was a banned book, which is to me almost baffling because, I guess there's language, vulgar language that I have heard every single high school class use since I've been a teacher for the last 10 years. So nothing new there. There's some depression, some mental health issues in that book, but I find it just to be so valuable to present students with literature they can relate to. I think reading something that could be banned or controversial, it's more of an issue with being open and honest with parents versus the students. I don't think I've ever, very rarely had a student say, I really don't want to read that because it offends me. It's usually the guardians who really need a little bit more open, honest communication. And so I do make sure to let everybody know, ahead of time before the semester begins, hey, this is what we're reading this semester. Here's a synopsis. Here's a link to Goodreads so you can see what it's about. And so I think just being open and honest about the potential issues within the novel, teaching high school, I think gives us a lot more openness because there's not as much sheltering that, we may see in middle school or elementary school with potentially sensitive texts or topics.
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. P, how about yourself?
Yeah, so as a special education teacher, I think the foundation and most important piece of being a special ed teacher is the relationships with the students and with the parents. And so I come at it from an angle of I'm co-teaching with an English department, so I'm not actually deciding on the text themselves. And so it's more working with those students and those families of, just like Ms. Ollinger was saying, of providing some resources of why this was a banned text and why, as a class, we're reading through it. And so, yeah, I think just having a kind of open dialogue with all parties involved.
Yeah, I like how you both highlighted the idea of explaining the why. I really think that's something I've noticed with a lot of my students when we talk about banned books or we talked about banned book month, a lot of students are kind of like, why is Harry Potter banned, or why is Captain Underpants banned, or why are they trying to pull these books from libraries? And I think it's creating an understanding of why these books are banned, and kind of like what Mrs. Allinger said, like being ready and willing to have those conversations, not only with the students, but with the parents, being able to have that hard talk, because obviously there is sensitivity that we have to have for our students. We teach diverse groups of individuals that have different backgrounds, different beliefs, different experiences. So if we're going to be reading something that has depression, like with Holden Caulfield, and suicidal ideologies, or drug abuse, or sexual events, it's important to be ready to be open and honest with our kids, but also be open and honest with our parents, for sure. So
Absolutely, and to kind of touch on the diversity of students that we work with, I think it's also hard when we are limited on the text that we're able to teach, because I think, and in my eyes, the ultimate goal is to create lifelong learners. And if that's, all of us have different interests. Like you just asked what we're all reading right now, and they're all on very different ends of spectrums. And so finding a text that relates to a student, that they relate to, and that engages them in reading, I think that's our ultimate goal. I can't speak for all of us, but personally, I think if we have students picking up books after they graduate, that's a win right there.
Mm-hmm. So what would your approach be in a situation where somebody wants to remove a book from your curriculum, or someone wants to challenge a text that you're reading? I mean, if we have a teacher who's never experienced this, or maybe a parent who has questions about this, like what would be your approach if this happened to you?
This does happen to me. So, I'll be upfront in my place of employment. I'm given the curriculum, I'm given the texts. So it's not something I've handpicked that, I've cradled every single, short story, and I know it's just the best choice. But, they are some really great texts in American literature. But when I dealt with this, it was in 9th grade. And it's just, the kids' first experience with high school. And it was an Edgar Allan Poe. I think it was The Black Cat. And the student was just like, I can't read this because of my religion. I can't read this level of violence or mental instability. I'm not quite sure why they didn't want to read it, because if a student says, no, this is my boundary, this is my limit, I'm not going to read it, then I say, okay, because it's my job, like Devin, like Mr. Parson said, to be, to have a good relationship with them, and to say, okay, if you don't want to read that, I respect this. What else can we find that's within the same genre? So there are certain texts that I'm ready, I'm ready for that kind of reaction from students or parents. I prefer when a student reaches out to me and says, hey, I don't feel comfortable reading this, because that's great. That's that relationship. That's the student having some self-advocacy and telling, the adult in their life they're not comfortable. And lovely. So I'm honestly proud of students when they say that. I do like to dig into like, well, what about this text is, something you don't want. So when we're looking for an alternate, we can find something you like, and then it does, lead into me maybe presenting them with 3 or 4 different choices along the same genre, usually not the same author, so that we can find something that they like. But again, it's probably happened 2 or 3 times out of the last decade for me.
Yeah, and I can't say that I've personally have had an experience with this, but I do see that teachers are, just like Ms. Ollinger mentioned, are able to adapt and provide alternative text and alternative assignments. And I think it'd be worthwhile if one student has hesitation, or one family, to bring it up with the whole class of, if any students have hesitation, just so if someone's having a hard time coming forward with some fear around a text, that they have that option of an alternative text. So rather than a required reading, I think having recommended reading.
Well, and that reminds me of something I used to do. So, I've dealt with texts like, one of my favorite texts to do with students, especially like now, it's so relevant today, and it's a classic. But To Kill a Mockingbird, there's a really hard talk you have to have early on, like before you can begin the book, and that's the use of a specific word that's within that text. And obviously, there's going to be a level of discomfort on my end, like as a teacher. Obviously, I need to figure out how to approach this in a manner that's sensitive to my kids, but also is true to my beliefs and my feelings about literature. And having that early conversation and kind of breaking the ice before cracking the spine of the book, I think is really important, because if the kids, if they know that you understand, I think that's huge. Kind of going with Mrs. Ollinger's, that avocation, right? Like, they understand that they can, because they see you showing that vulnerability as a leader in your classroom. Like, hey guys, like, this is a hard topic that we're going to talk about, but we need to talk about this because it's important. They see you have that emotional battle, and they're like, okay, if Mr. Parson or Mrs. Allinger or Mr. E's having this issue, it's real. And I think making students feel validated is important, especially when bringing up something that might be sensitive. So yeah, I think it's huge. And I know, for a couple of years I had to navigate that path to finding the right way to approach a specific word or a specific passage within a text that might be a little bit hard to handle. And but I think, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and I think with some of these complex texts, and it's important that as educators, we don't allow students just to fall back on kind of some easy truisms of really, when we're teaching a complex text, to do a deep dive into it and have discussions, so that there's introspection and just a deep review of the text itself. And then I think it's also our job as educators to point out and condemn, if there's racism in a text, to point out and condemn those aspects of it. But I think as educators, sometimes we give students an easy out to where they can just type a paper and try to put in those easy truisms. But I think with some of these texts, there's such an opportunity for a deep dive and introspection as a society, and we hold a lot of responsibility as educators to guide that conversation.
For sure. That's so important what you both said about conversations and about really front loading, especially a novel that deals with an issue like racism, because racism is prevalent in 2021. And as a white woman teacher, like, I have to just own, when I stand in front of a classroom of kids that maybe don't look like me, like, hey, I know I'm a white woman. What are your experiences with racism? With To Kill a Mockingbird, I've taught that a couple years in a row, and we sit in a circle and we talk about it. And students share really painful memories sometimes, but I don't read that. That's not the first text we read as a class, because we have to have a sense of community before we dive into something that could bring up painful memories or truths and realities for these kids.
Yeah, and I think I just had a thought, but I think I just lost my thought.
I think, like Miss Ollinger said, just that front loading piece, I think, is really important. Just for a lot of reasons. I think when it helps students see what's coming forward, and that introspection piece really can happen when it's front loaded.
Yeah, and then having the kids also be reflective. So kind of going like what Mr. P was saying and Mrs. A, like going and having the kids reflect upon the way the text affects them. You know, like to me as a teacher of reading, I really want my students to not just, you know, obviously do the literary analysis, you know, identify the use of characterization to convey a universal message. I mean, obviously, we want them to be able to identify an author's intent, you know, the target audience, but it's also important for them to reflect upon, like, kind of going off of what Kylene Beers and Rob Probst wrote about in Disruptive Thinking, like the book head heart approach. So not only is it what the book says, but like what thoughts does it bring to our mind and how does it affect us emotionally? Like if a book makes you angry, why does it make you angry?
Mm-hmm.
If a book makes you sad, why does it make you sad? And I think with the risk we have of removing certain text or like censoring text, kind of circling back to the beginning, is it removes that that reflective piece about society and that connection to the real world, and it makes it so that they don't have a safe avenue to really approach these issues. Because with literature, you know, it's a good place for them to navigate those waters with their parents, with their teachers, with their peers, together as a community. But if we remove that opportunity from them, they're kind of going at it alone. And you know, to me, that's something that we need to work together as teachers, as parents, to help the students to know they're not alone as they navigate these different circumstances of life, you know. So it's very, very it's a heck of a responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is, and that's something that's hard with the you know, with just getting kids to access literature that is not presented to them by the teacher. You know, I've throughout my years, like the best way was just trying to get them to engage in independent reading. And as a classroom teacher, when you know, when we're in a classroom with students, having a teacher library is really valuable, and fill it full of diverse books that might spark, you know, some sort of emotion with them in them. I have a book right here that I read this summer, The Hate You Give. I don't know if you guys have read this. But wow, did it make me angry? Wow, did it make me sad? And like, I just thought I need my kids to read that. And that's something I would have in my teacher library, because it's important for students to read something that's uncomfortable, or to read something by someone who maybe looks like them. I mean, we've got to expose them to so many different types of literature. And I wasn't really exposed until I was in college and I took an African American lit class and I was like, oh, wow, I was just so naive. I had no idea. And since then, like that really changed my life. But I want to be the one that helps, you know, introduce kids to that kind of literature where they're just angry and upset and they want to change something. I think that's our responsibility, to expose them to those types of texts.
Mm. And it's also important to guide them with how to handle that anger, like you were saying, like that, like the responsibility to expose them, but also, you know, it's a good opportunity, like with project-based learning, you know, how can you create something authentic for the students where they take this controversial topic and they evoke something good from within them to pay it forward into the world where they give something good, that hopefully makes a positive change. But so if you were just to give some guidance, maybe to some, oh my goodness, give some guidance to prospective teachers or people who are currently teaching right now, if you were about to start a unit with a book that you know might be controversial, whether it be To Kill a Mockingbird, whether it be, you know, Fahrenheit 451, 1984, I mean, you name The Hate You Give, what is like your first step to introducing this unit? Like for me, the first step that I do. So one thing that I do to help with communication is I send emails to my parents like every Monday or every Tuesday at the beginning of the week, giving them kind of an update of what's going on. It's usually like a paragraph, nothing too detail. But I think what I would do first off would just send an email to the parents and just be very open and say, here is the book we're doing. Contact me with questions. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think, oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
You go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think kind of like what we were touching on and just like you were talking about, Mr. E, is just front loading, not only with the families, but also with the students. And I do feel that children are incredibly smart no matter what age they are. And so having an honest conversation with the class of this is the book, these are the reasons it's been banned. You know, and then having those alternative assignments, I think is always great too, alternative text.
Absolutely. I agree with both of you. And I think, you know, as a parent, I've got 3 children myself. I appreciate a lot of notice for anything. If it's a novel that I need to buy, please give me 2 weeks, you know. So I give parents everything up front, first, you know, day of the semester. Hey, these are the novels we're reading. And then when we get closer, I do go into the approach that Mr. E said, like these are the different, you know, reasons, or these are the different sensitive topics if we're dealing with, you know, racism or sexual assault or anything that might be triggering or be sensitive. And then I do like to read why it was banned. Absolutely. We always do that with Catcher in the Rye. We read different articles and different perspectives. I mean, why was it banned? Did these people who say, hey, I don't want my kid to read this because I don't appreciate the drug use, did they have some, is that valid? Yes, of course that opinion is valid. But why do we still want to engage and read in texts? Regardless, and Fahrenheit 451 is a great one for the banned book conversation. And I love that book. An old woman who goes down with her library. She's my hero.
There's something powerful about that expression of like, just going off on a tangent unrelated to anything we've been talking about today. The first lines of that whole that book. I had a professor in my grad class a few years ago. We had to pick like our favorite quote from a book, and mine was, "It was a pleasure to burn," just because the way Bradbury starts it, there are so many different interpretations. Like it's a very ambiguous statement because there's like the burn of passion, there's the burn of pain and suffering, but also like the lightning, but then the destruction. But then, yeah, like the impression of the woman who chooses to go down with her books, you know, something so powerful and impactful in her life, you know, and it makes me wonder, would I do something like that? I don't know. It's who knows? I don't know.
I like to think I'm her, but I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Hopefully we never have to experience that. No, hey, thank you all very much. And I think an important takeaway from here, I think, is just the importance of communication, advocation, and being ready to have those conversations with parents. And as all of us are parents, myself, Mr. P, and Mrs. A, we're all parents. And I think, you know, from a parent's perspective, being ready to work alongside our teachers, trusting them to do their best and to be their best, but also allowing us to also have a input into our child's experience with literature, and being willing and open to have those conversations outside of the classroom, I think are very, very effective tools. And I think if we have that going forward, you know, I think that can really help us to bridge these controversies we have with literature and really expose our kids to great text. And hopefully, like what Mr. Parson said in the beginning, like lifelong readers. I think we want that. We want our kids to be picking up books, and you know, we've all had a book that's changed our lives, and hopefully we can have our kids have that experience once, twice, 3 times in a lifetime. So thank you all so much for being a part of this, and I hope to have you guys on here again sometime for my channel. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you. All right, everybody, that was me talking with Mr. Parson and Mrs. Ollinger. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you like it, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, hit the bell, all the things that you do for YouTube. And I look forward to seeing you on our next video. So as always, make it a great day.